Thank you.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All those years of cheerleading
Yeah.
made that the most perfect clap ever. Not really, but okay. As a mom, I would like to explain to you what it's like to be a psychic medium and to have received numerous questions from other parents about your children and if they see monsters in their closets or people in their house or just stuff in general. And I really want to explain Halloween too and where this all really began. Um, this is going to be the most comfortable topic I talk about or discuss on Momsters because it's so close to my heart and I live it every day. I grew up in a very small town in northeastern Pennsylvania called West Pittston, and it is nestled by the Susquehanna River. And as long as I could remember, Halloween in our town was just an event. And it wasn't as if there were, parades or fireworks. It was just the energy of the town. I'm not even certain why that is. West Pittston is something like you would see in a movie. It's just this small town. The houses are somewhat close together. It has the mansions on the avenue by the river. And there is something about the fragrance of the dead falling leaves on the ground and the rustling of the leaves in the wind that just make it a spooky place. When I asked my children about the area, they will say it's spooky all the time. And I would agree with them. It is, whether it's the middle of the summer or winter, as soon as it gets dark out, it just becomes eerie. I don't know why that is, but it's a great, fabulous, embraced energy. Um, Growing up in West Pittston, like I said, Halloween was just this huge event, and I was grateful because my mother really embraced Halloween, as did all of my family. When I was growing up, I had cousins that were close to me, and we would do everything haunted. Never fail. Every time I would sleep at their house, I'd have to call my parents because I was afraid that something was going to come out and get me. So 3 o'clock in the morning, they'd have to drive over to, my cousin's house and pick me up and bring me home. Um, it was just how I grew up. I always grew up around anything that had to do with Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Abbott and Costello, anything that had to do with Halloween. It was our way of life, and Halloween in my family as a child was just for me. It was bigger than any other holiday we had. Um, my mom would dress us in purchased costumes from like the five and dime to homemade costumes. And really, we would just tell her what we wanted to be, and she did it. She was miraculous. Somehow, she came up with the costume. And my favorite costume, the one I was always most comfortable with, and even in photos, my favorite was that of a gypsy. I dressed as a gypsy. I must have been in the fourth or fifth grade, and I had a scarf on my head, and I wore a flowy dress, and I had a crystal ball, and I just felt the most comfortable ever. Like, this is the way my life is supposed to be every day. And all I could think about in that crystal ball was I could see things. I could see the future. I could see what's happening. And that is one of the reasons why I just love that holiday because you get to be maybe someone that you not necessarily could be any other time of the year. So I like to be spooky things. Um, as I had grown up, as I was growing up and becoming, in my 20s and even in my 30s, I really started to research the beginnings of Halloween, like where it came from, the tradition, why we did what we did. And I'm going to mention a book. It's called Halloween, and it's by the author is Silver Ravenwolf. And I look, she doesn't endorse me. She doesn't even know who I am. Um, but this book really, in a very lighthearted way, gives you a great description of what Halloween is, along with some ideas of ways to celebrate it. And I recommend it, especially if you have children. It's an easy read. It's a great book. So that book really kind of changed my life when it came to Halloween, because it gave me like the basics of where it came from, like the Celtic traditions, and why when the settlers came from Europe to the United States, and they didn't have turnips because there were no turnips, like there were in Europe, in the United States. So we used pumpkins instead of turnips as jack-o'-lanterns. And what was the purpose of jack-o'-lanterns? Well, they were there to evil, where to to I don't know where what the word is, the evil spirits. Okay, so they're chasing away the evil spirits. And just the tradition of dressing up and why we dressed up. And so we would hide from the deceased relatives that would come back, or we would hide from those that were roaming, those souls that were roaming the earth at this time. And a lot of the celebration would have to do about the ending of the year, or the third festival, harvest festival of the year. One of those festivals in August, one in September, and the other, of course, Halloween in October. And it was really about the preparation of going into fall and going into winter, about reaping all of the what you have sown, actually, in the fields. Uh, One of the things that I read that I just embraced this idea, I thought it was phenomenal. I think everyone should do it. Is one of the traditions is on Halloween, your deceased loved ones come to visit you, which also kind of goes hand in hand with Day of the Dead. And you should leave an empty place setting for them at your table, so that they come and they visit and they're welcomed. And I do that. I'll bring out my best china and leave a place setting at the table on Halloween for my deceased relatives to come and visit, and hopefully bring us good fortune. So Halloween, and it's just taken on such a fabulous, fabulous part of our lives. And a tradition that we now have with my children is that we have a huge trick or treat Halloween party at our house. And it has been going on since my son was born. And we have the same families, or, it's almost like all of our friends have spent at least one Halloween at our house. It's kind of a big deal. And our neighborhood is, I would say, similar to what I grew up with in West Pittston. Um, the streets are like a Spielberg movie. There's kids everywhere. My husband goes a little bit out of control with the decorations and the fog machine, and the kids walk through a trestle to get to my house to get full-size candy bars. It's a lot of fun. And I always had like two costumes per child when my kids were growing up, just in case on Halloween they decided they wanted to wear something different, or you had like the school costume and then the costume for trick or treat. It's just a big deal, and they embrace it as much as I do. Now, growing up as a child, because I had mentioned previously on episodes that I am a psychic medium. So, growing up as a child, seeing dead people has always been just a part of my nature. And if you explain to me how I do it, I would have to say it's like breathing. And as a mom, I was always concerned that my children would have the same, um, I don't know, abilities that I did, but not to the extreme that I do, which I'm kind of grateful for. I mean, they have something, but, and other parents would call me then. So as my children were going through grade school, elementary school, grade school, middle school, even now in that, they're in high school, parents will reach out to me and ask me questions like, hey, this is happening to my child. What do I do? And a lot of those questions have to go with them seeing like monsters in their room. My child won't sleep. They're afraid of the dark. They have to sleep with the lights on. There's a monster in the closet, in the room. When they were a baby, they would be staring at the ceiling and laughing. Why is this happening? And the answer to it is actually much easier than you think. It's a very simple answer. And usually, these people who your children are seeing are your deceased loved ones. So, your deceased loved ones they surround you and they assist you and they comfort you. And in some cases, they may even guide you. And that also goes for your children. Now, if you have a grandparent that your child did not know, and they're coming to the home to embrace the child's, to make sure the child's okay, and the child sees them and gets a little freaked out, that could be the monster under the couch or in the closet. So I always I always recommend to bring out a photo album and have the child go through the photo album and look at the photos. And I really bet they'd be able to point out, this is the person who's in my room, or this is what's going on. Rarely it's actual paranormal activity, unless you would call your deceased relatives visiting you paranormal activity. Uh, a lot of times too, parents would say, "Oh, I see something on the monitor. There's an orb." It again, just your deceased loved ones coming to visit your child to make sure your child is okay. Uh, we've gone through all of that. I've gone through it with my friends. I've gone through it on my own. Um, the biggest complaint, though, I get from parents, and they kind of don't like my answer on this, but I stick to it. When your child is afraid and they're afraid to sleep at night, and they keep waking up and they keep waking you up, then there's an issue. And that doesn't mean that it's a spiritual issue or a ghost issue or whatever kind of issue you want to say, but there's an issue. And I always believed that you should just sleep with your child because I knew what it was like having my deceased loved ones, who I didn't know who they were, visit me and how frightened I was. And I would yell to my parents, there's someone in the house. And they would go looking for a person in human form. And I was seeing a person in spirit form. And rather than having that fear, and again, with my children, rather than having that fear, I would I would either sleep with them or let them sleep with us or whatever it was, just to bring them comfort. And my feeling is, if your children are sleeping well, you're sleeping well. So, and I just know what that experience is. I know what it feels like to be paralyzed when you're sleeping, and I would never want that for a child. So, there are other things that you could do. You could put crystals, certain stones under their bed. Of course, depending upon their age, you don't want them to eat them. You could use a salt lamp or, a ghost away, which is like a spray bottle with maybe some kind of blessed water in it. Really, whatever's going to make your child comfortable. Okay. You could always do as your nightly routine before they go to bed. Prayers are always good too. So, as far as Halloween goes and the spookiness of it all, that can transpire anytime during a year. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in what we would call fall. Uh, Children really have no barriers, no constraint when it comes to what's coming through to them. They're not like an adult where we have, if you want to say, a sense of logic. Could this really be happening? Is this really something that I'm seeing? Is this my imagination? Children don't have that. They just take it for what it is. They see a person in the house and that's what they see. That goes for your animals also. Do you ever notice that your animals may not go in a certain section of your house or are creeped out about a certain, maybe even person coming into your house? And again, it's all about energy. It's just all about energy. So I just tell, pay attention. And if your child does come to you and asks the question, or I see this person, or they tell you things and it comes true, or they say they had a dream about a deceased loved one, never dismiss it. Just listen. And even though you may be a little freaked out, um, the point of this is that you don't want to have your child freaked out. You want them to be as comfortable as possible. You want them to know that this is okay, because 99% of the time that child will either grow out of it or become so distracted by life that they may not realize it's happening to them. And of course, there are those small few that have, the super psychic abilities, and that's all right too. We could help them out with it. Uh, so yes, that's my take on Halloween and the spookiness, and I really enjoy um, anything that has to do with that, and I enjoy being a psychic medium about it too. I do like readings for people in galleries. I just did a gallery at the Grand Theater in East Greenville, Pennsylvania, and it's a haunted movie theater. And I get some of the best questions at that theater. The people who come and the things that they ask uh, are really pretty intriguing, and it's entertaining not just for the audience but for me, and to answer those questions. And it's always when they ask about their children. This is happening to my child. What do I do? I am always here to help with those kind of questions. Um, so this Halloween, when it's time for you to do your trick or treat, uh, don't be so scared of those ghosts and goblins, because most of them mean well.